Hello everyone, this is Dr. Ashish Chauhan, and the topic for today's discussion is connective tissue. तो आज हम कनेक्टिव टिश्यू के डिस्कशन को देखेंगे और कनेक्टिव टिश्यू के बारे में चीजें समझेंगे. So let us begin with it. So today we are going to study connective tissue. Connective tissue. So in our understanding for this connective tissue, let us first of all break it into two parts. First of all, connective and tissue. So what is tissue first of all? So tissue, it is a group of cells, right? It is a tissue is a group of cells, and generally they have a common origin. वो एक ही जगह से ओरिजिनेट करते हैं. उनके जो पेरेंटल cells होते हैं वो सेम होते हैं, right? It is a group of cells generally having a common origin which are united together to achieve a particular function, right? So this is the basic definition of a tissue. It is a group of cells which are generally having a common origin and they are united together to perform or to achieve a particular function. For example, I take the example of a tissue called muscle, right? Muscle, it is formed by a group of it is formed by a group of muscle cells, right? They unite together to achieve a function that we call is contraction, right? Because there is contraction in the muscles, we are able to move our body. Fine. So this is the definition. There are many other types of tissues in our body, right? For example, blood is a type of tissue. For example, we have cartilages. They are also tissues, right? So there are different types of tissues in our body, right? A neural tissue like the nerve. These nerves are grouped together for the conduction of impulse from brain to the periphery to different parts of our body, or from different parts of our body back to our brain. So these are the examples of tissues. Now, what is connective tissue? So we have to understand that what connective tissues are. So let us first of all start by defining what connective tissues are, right? They are of course, they are the tissues which bind, right, structures. So they are the tissues which bind structures. Also, they form the framework, right, and support, right? They also form the framework and support for organs. Organs के लिए support बनाते हैं, and the body as a whole, and the body as a whole. So this is the basic definition of a connective tissue. Let me give you some example. Our skeleton formed by the bones, right? From here, all the skeletal things, right? Our skeleton is formed by the bone, and because we have a skeleton formed by bone, which is a very strong form of connective tissue, that this is the reason why our body we are able to stand erect on our body, right? We are able to walk, and along these connective tissue of bone we have these muscles, right? And this muscle is also a type of connective tissue, and this is also helping these skeleton stay in proper position. Also, because of the contraction of the muscles, we are able to walk. So these are some of the examples of connective tissue. Now let us come to the basic thing, right? Any form of connective tissue, I'll write CT for connective tissue. Any form of connective tissue has few things in common, like a connective tissue will have certain cells, right? And the cells will be present in a matrix. Now, what is this matrix? If anybody has seen the movie Matrix is, suppose we are Suppose this is a human being, and this human being or a person is surrounded by the environment, right? We live in a particular environment. Like for example, I live in my house, right? So this is the environment surrounding me. So in that case, this human being will be the cell, and the environment surrounding the environment in which this human being is living is the matrix. So similarly it goes with the connective tissue as well, right? There will be cells and there will be matrix, and this matrix, या कह सकते हो सेल का घर जो है जहाँ पे सेल्स रहते हैं, these matrix can be solid, right, as in case of bones, or it can be liquid as in case of blood, right? So these are some of the examples that are given in your NCERT regarding the matrix, whether it can be uh, solid or liquid. Now, let us start by talking about the functions of these connective tissue first of all. And once we are done writing the function of these connective tissue, we will move on and see different type of connective tissue, and will know how these connective tissue are involved in the function that we will write before talking about the connective tissue, right? So I'm talking about the functions of connective tissue. The first function, like I said, that they are involved in binding and support, right? The first function is binding and support, right? The second function I can write is protection, right? For example, here I have drawn this skeleton. You see these are the ribs, right? And this rib provide protection to the underlying organ like the lungs, right? Or maybe the liver and stomach and spleen. Many other organs are provided support because of this skeleton, right? Similarly, in our abdomen, right, there is no any bone in the front, but in front of these we have lots of muscles, right? Abdominal muscles, or the muscles of the abdominal wall, which provide protection to the underlying viscera or the organs, right? Similarly, we have a cranium, we have this head. Inside this skull bone, there is a very delicate and one of the most important structures in our body, that is brain, right? So in that way it provides protection. The third thing we can write is the insulation, right? Insulation. What is insulation? It is a suppose if I say I'm insulated, what does it mean? It means that any heat that is being produced in my body, it won't go out, right? So it helps in the conservation of heat in our body, right? Similarly, uh, any fluctuation in the temperature in outside environment won't affect much mm, the inner equilibrium or the inner environment of our body, and that is what we call insulation, right? And the tissues which are involved in insulation, the most important of them are the fat cells, right? So कहते हैं ना, मोटे लोगों को ठंड कम लगती है, गर्मी ज्यादा लगती है, क्योंकि उनकी बॉडी में गर्मी बची रह जाती है, गर्मी को डेसिपेट नहीं कर पाते. दैट्स व्हाई these fat people feel more heat, and they are kind of sensitive to not at all sensitive to cold. But this does not happen in all the cases, right? There are cases where fat people tend to be very sensitive to cold, right? Fat cells, or we call them adipocytes, right? Fat cells or adipocytes, or they can be involved in the storage of reserve food, right? Storage of reserve food. They can be involved in the storage of reserve food. And fifth, like these fat cells only, right? They are not only acting as insulators, but they are also involved in the storage of fat, right? And they are also involved in the transport, right, of substances. So they are also involved in the transport of substances. Like I mentioned, the blood is a type of connective tissue, and we know that blood is a connective tissue which helps in the transportation of different substance from different part of the body to different parts of the body, right? We'll be talking in detail about them, right? So these are the basic functions of the connective tissue. Moving on, let us talk about the classification of connective tissue. How connective tissues can be classified in NCERT, though the names are mentioned, but a proper classification has not been given. So I'm giving you a proper classification which will be uh, way more than enough at your level, right? So we are talking about the classification of connective tissue, right? Connective tissue can be classified into two types. One is connective tissue proper, right? And the other type is specialized specialized connective tissue. See, in this part there is nothing much understand. So we will have to remember these type of connective tissue. So the connective tissue proper, it can be loose connective tissue or dense connective tissue. I'm not going into the details of what these loose connective tissue, why we are calling them loose connective tissue or dense connective tissue, because that would be way more than what is required at your level. So loose connective tissue can be areolar connective tissue. Areolar connective tissue, mind you, they are present at the level of skin, right? Areolar connective tissue. Then we have this adipose connective tissue. Adipose connective tissue, which I mentioned just now, right? And then we have this reticular connective tissue, right? So these are the three types of loose connective tissue. When I talk about dense connective tissue, dense connective tissue can be dense regular, right? Dense irregular, and maybe elastic, right? So these are the type of connective tissue proper. In specialized connective tissue in NCRT, we are going to talk about three types, right? Blood, which has been described in detail, and we'll be talking about it in much more of detail, right? Bone and cartilage, right? So cartilage can be of different type. Like I can mention the name of this cartilage, hyaline cartilage, right? The first one is hyaline cartilage, and it is the most abundant one. Then we have the elastic cartilage, right? Hyaline cartilage is present in the respiratory tract, right? So examples of respiratory tract, you can say larynx, right? Elastic cartilage is present at the ear pinna, ear pinna, right? So in this human being, I can show you where is ear pinna. These are the ear pinna, right? These are the ear pinna, and it is formed by elastic cartilage, and as the name suggests, it is elastic, very elastic, right? These are the ear pinna, or it can be present at tip of nose. So these are the locations where elastic cartilage is present, and the other type is what we call fibrocartilage. Fibrocartilage. This fibrocartilage is present in intervertebral disc, right? So the disc between the two vertebra, it is formed by the fibrocartilage, right? So this is the basic classification of the cartilage, and these are the general locations of some of the type of connective tissues, right? So now let us talk about the blood in a bit more of detail, right? So in blood, like I said, any form of connective tissue will have certain cells, and there will be matrix. So what is the matrix in blood and what are the cells, right? So when I talk about blood, the cells in the matrix, right? So when I talk about let us first of all talk about the matrix, right? Matrix is the plasma. Yes, this is the very same plasma, um, you know, behind which people were running during the time of COVID, and finally the AIMS came up with this guidelines that plasma is not at all necessary for the treatment of COVID patients, and this is what the plasma is, right? So blood without the cells, or the cells which are present in blood, when we take out the cells, the thing that remain in the blood is what we call plasma, right? So this plasma consists of proteins, right? certain hormones, right? Or maybe some ions, right? So these are the things, basic things which are present in the plasma, right? So it is like this. You can take the example of it as some shikanji or maybe something like that. The water part is the plasma, right? And the cells or the maybe you can say some of the ingredients which have you have dissolved in this are the cells. So this is how it works, right? So when I talk about the cells can be RBC, right? The cells can be WBC, or the cells can be platelets, right? The diagram of these WBC cells have been given in your um, NCRT, and I would like you to go there and see those diagrams, how different form of white blood cells look, right? So these are the type of cell, and if I elaborate this white blood cells, I'll give you a mnemonic to remember all these white blood cells, and along with that, I'll try to give you some idea about what a doctor generally sees in this uh, when a doctor sends a test for RBC, WBC, and platelets, right? So just a very quick overview of the things which are happening, right? So when I talk about WBC, I'll give you a mnemonic: NLMEB, right? So N stands for neutrophil, right? L stands for lymphocytes, right? M stands for monocytes, right? E stands for eosinophils, and B stands for basophils, right? So this sequence is as per uh, the amount of these cells are present, right? Nearly 70% are neutrophils, and basophil constitute 0.01%, right? Lymphocyte, I don't know, about maybe 20% or so, right? So whenever there is an increase in neutrophil, we are expecting some acute inflammation. What is acute inflammation? Acute inflammation is a current ongoing inflammation, right? So lymphocytes are also, and these monocytes are involved with, I would say, chronic inflammation. So this chronic inflammation is when inflammation is going on for quite a longer period of time, right? Eosinophil, when its number increases, it is seen in case of some allergy, right? So when it is increasing, doctor might suspect some kind of allergy, and these basophils are also associated with allergy, right? And it is also involved with some worms in the stomach and many more things, right? So these are the form of WBCs which are present in the blood, and we all know that the function of these platelet is these platelets are involved in blood clotting, right? So initial phase of the blood clotting is the I would say that blood clotting in the initial state it is initiated by the platelets, right? And RBC, as we all know, that it is involved in the transportation transportation of gases, right? So it is involved in the transportation of gases. Along with that, other functions can be attributed uh, to this blood connective tissue, like transportation of digested food, right? Digested food is transported from the intestine to liver to heart to other parts, right? This is how it moves. And what else? There is also transportation of waste products, right? Transportation of waste products, and it is involved in the immunity, right? It is also involved in the immunity of an individual. So these are the basic functions of your blood connective tissue. These are the cells of blood connective tissue, and we have extensively discussed about this, right? So this is it. Now, moving on to another type of connective tissue, that is called bone, right? Bone is a very solid form of connective tissue. So the cells and the matrix, right? So when I talk about matrix, right? When I talk about matrix, it is solid, right? This matrix is solid and it is made up of calcium and phosphorus. It is made up of calcium and phosphorus. So there are many other things, but at your level, calcium and phosphorus is enough, right? And then there are cells. Cells, the name bone, when I talk about bone, what we have to keep in mind, bone is called osteon or bone, right? So any cells which will be involved in the formation or destruction of bone are called as osteocytes or osteoclasts. Osteo will be there, right? So the cells involved in the formation of bone are called osteoblasts, right? Osteoblasts are the cell, while the cell involved in the destruction of bone formation, right? So clasts, right? So these are the type of uh, bones which are present here, right? So now there is a thing given up there. I would like you to see it. Just give me a moment. I'll show you something from the bone part, which I had earlier taught, and I want you guys to see as well, so that we can just revise it. Yes. Now see this diagram. This is very clear to understand that these cells which I have drawn, right? These star-shaped cells are called the osteoblast cells, right? And surrounding it is the matrix. Fine. Now this is the structure of a bone, right? This is the structure of a bone which I have tried to draw, and I have taken a section from this part, right? Suppose this is the bone. I have cut it from the middle, and I'm trying to see this part. When I cut this like this, right? The inner part is called medulla, and the outer part is called cortex, right? So I'm just magnifying this diagram to see what things are we going to see in this, right? So this is the diagram showing the Haversian canal. What are these Haversian canals? See, these spiral, right? Spiral networks or spiral form of in the matrix. These osteocytes are proliferating, right? But for these osteocytes to grow, there is requirement of blood, right? So these Haversian canals run longitudinally like this. These Haversian canals run in this direction and carry not only the blood vessels but also the nerves, right, for the sensations, and blood vessels for nourishment. So these osteocytes, they get nourishment from this Haversian canals, right? So this is about the uh, bone, its matrix, its cells, and these things are given up there, so we can refer to that, right? So now let us come back to where we were discussing different parts, right? So now, so when we talk about the functions of bone, it supports the framework of body, right? It supports the framework of body. First thing, right? Another, it anchors the muscles and support organs, right? It anchors muscles, right? And it also supports organs. So these are the functions of mm, bone, right? Now, let us quickly talk about some of the other type of connective tissue. The one that we are going to talk about is ligament. What is ligament? Let us say there are two bones here, right? So there are two bones here, and this ligament is something which is going to connect these two bones, right? So ligament is something which is going to connect this two bones, right? So bone to bone connection is done by ligament. These are elastic, right? Because at this point there will be lot of mobility. So to support that mobility, it needs to be elastic, right? And they have very high tensile strength, such that they can bear a lot of stress and strain, right? And uh, they have very high tensile strength and very less amount of matrix. So these are the features of ligament. What else do we have? We have another type is called tendons, right? Ligament are involved in the connection of bone to bone, while tendons connect muscle to bone, right? They are involved in connecting muscles to bone. They are fibrous. Fibrous, it means there are lots of fibers, right? Lots of fibers are involved, so they are fibrous. And because there are lots of fibers, they are having very high strength, right? They have very high strength and reduced flexibility. So these are the basics about the tendon, right? Now we can talk about cartilage as well, right? Cartilage, like I told you, the location of different kind of cartilage. So here the matrix of cartilage is solid, right? It is solid and it is formed by certain proteins and sugars. It is not really necessary to know the name of those proteins and sugars at your level, right? And the cells which are involved in the formation of cartilage are called chondrocytes, right? Chondrocytes. So this is it. We have already talked about the location of different types of cartilage where they are present, right? And then I have one more to go, that is areolar connective tissue. Areolar connective tissue is a type of loose connective tissue, right? It is a type of loose connective tissue. What else? It is present in the dermis of skin. Where else it is present? Right, it is present around the muscles of blood vessels, right? And nerves. It is also present in bone marrow. These are the locations, right? And their function, if I talk about their function, they are involved in, they fill the gap inside the organ and support internal organ, right? So they fill the gap or space inside organs and support internal organs, right? And they are also involved in helping in repair, right? Then I talked about adipocytes, which are involved in the storage of fat. So this is all about the tissues, connective tissues. So in next class, we'll probably be seeing other types of tissues as well, right?